Last time we finished the Old Testament in our summary of the books of the Bible, but now we're on to the New. The first four books are called the Gospels, which is a translation of the Greek word euangelion, which means good news or good tidings. The first three, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they're called the Synoptic Gospels because they have similar content in a similar form. They tell Jesus' story from the start in ministry to his death, burial, and resurrection, more or less in order. John, on the other hand, is not synoptic. He tells mostly the story of Jesus' last 2 weeks, with a few earlier accounts, as we'll see in John's book, as well as in the books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They all have a specific purpose, but John's is to combat a heresy, and it requires certain things to be emphasized. And John's account was much later, AD 95. Okay, let's talk about Matthew. The author is Matthew, the apostle, the tax collector. The audience is mostly Jewish readers. The date's about 60 AD. The theme is Jesus is the Messiah that fulfills Jewish prophecies. So the big things or events is all the money that's mentioned in it, the genealogy that's oriented towards Joseph, the baptism, temptation. Sermon on the Mount is huge. Many miracles, calling of the disciples, woes, parables, end times, Last Supper, death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, and of course, the Great Commission. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I've given you, and be sure of this, I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. That's Matthew 28, 19, and 20. Okay, let's move from there to the fastest moving book in the whole New Testament. It's called Mark. Jesus runs through this book. Guy had his like one of those things across his chest. Number one, I guess. Author is John Mark, who is writing down the words of Peter the Apostle in Rome, probably in the early 60s. Maybe this or Matthew was the first gospel. Jesus is the servant of God is the theme of this one. And the big things or events are pretty much similar to the ones in Matthew, except for Matthew does start with some birth stuff. What we skip to is baptism. But most of the rest of the stuff is similar in content, a lot of similar things. There's a big section on future end times, and of course, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. This also has a form of the Great Commission. Key verse is Mark 16:5. When they entered the tomb, they saw a young man clothed in a white robe sitting on the right side. The women were shocked, but the angel said, "Don't be alarmed. You're looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He is not here. He's risen from the dead. Look, this is where they laid his body." God bless you. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Day of Devotion.